going for a slightly unusual knife sharpening tutorial today, involving a coffee cup. Now, you're not always out in the field when you have a knife in need of a new edge. Sometimes you are at a holiday get-together with family, or you're helping a friend host a party and they need help with dinner preparations or something like that. And you find that they just don't keep as good a care of their cutlery as you do. And unless you have an EDC sharpener on you, like one of these, you're very unlikely to have access to a whetstone or any way to refresh an edge. Only that's not true, because almost everybody has some kind of ceramic cookware, or a plate, or a coffee cup, like this one. This is actually how I learned to sharpen knives. Now, a little bit ahead, I'm not going to talk about doing sharpening on a proper whetstone, because there's a million of those on YouTube, and I don't need to start out by just adding one to the pile. So I'm going on the way low end and at the way high end. This is going to be a very controversial video, but if you click through this sharpener right here, you find that I am actually very fond of using a carbide block. One of these, not one of the pull-through ones. Don't get one of those. Okay, on to the actual meat. Start by checking to see if you are in need of a new edge. Line up your knife blade with a nearby source of light. Let's see if I can find... There we go. Rocking it back and forth, you can see it glint right there. Those are spots where the edge has been folded over, or has been nicked up, or otherwise seen hard use. That means it's time for a touch-up, and it doesn't actually matter how much it bites or not when you go across to test the edge that way, because you can visually see that there is a problem. I'm going to inch this closer to us. We're on a cloth because we're working with water. That's what I've got in this dish right here. I'm going to start by soaking the ceramic. The water here is going to help guide the metal powder, the swath, away from what we're doing once it's all loaded up. Okay, what I mean by loaded up is if you take an edge, if you take steel, and go back and forth right here, you see how it's taking on that dark color. That tells us that metal from the knife is coming off on the coffee cup. That means that the ceramic in the cup is harder than the steel. Let's clean that off a little bit more. And add a little bit more water. Okay. You can test that on a variety of things. Just take something metal that you aim to sharpen and give it a rub on, and if there are scratches on the item and streaks of a dark color matching the metal on the thing that you scratched it against, there's a good chance that the thing that you were rubbing it against is harder than the thing that you're rubbing with. This is required for sharpening. Now, the reason that I brush it off there is because there's bunches of little holes in here and other, like, craggly bits. And if the space between that gets filled up with metal, you're just going to glide over the top of it, and you're not actually going to do anything. So it is a good practice, generally, to moisten it up every once in a while. Okay, now, I will tell you that learning to do it this way is a little bit harder than learning to do it on a perfectly flat, straight stone, but the payoff is exactly the same, and all the principles are still there. Now, what we're wanting to manage as we set it down and lift up right there is the angle that we're holding against this flat surface. For most things, you want it at about 20 degrees. For kitchenware, you usually have it about 15 degrees, but lifting it up and giving it a couple strokes, I recommend that beginners go backwards first, like that. You'll be able to tell, provided you have a wide enough bit there, that where the shine is by angling it slightly and seeing if there's a little ribbon of light left over. If there's a ribbon of light towards the cutting edge, that means that you were too steep, which will leave with a duller edge overall. And if there's a secondary ribbon towards the cheek of the blade, that means that you were too shallow, which might be what you want if you are re-edging something completely, and that's something that you can do on ceramic. Let's get some more water on there. Okay, now for your first couple knives, I recommend you only go backwards that way, because if your hands aren't steady and you are horribly uncoordinated, you can skip and flip over. That would be bad. You're creating more work for yourself in the future. Now, having done this for quite a long time, I know exactly what I'm aiming for here. Now you notice that I lift up a little bit when I get towards the end. That's because as you follow it, it's straight from here to here, but from there, in order to maintain a perfect 20 degrees, you can't just go straight across right there. You need to lift up very slightly, because your axis is going to be like that, and then as you get around here, it shifts. Right there. Getting that so that you don't have wildly different angles here and here can be kind of tricky, but you can take one of your a knife that you're comfortable beating on and give it a couple tries. It shouldn't take too terribly long. Another technique that I would do very often is, as I'm going along and I'm loading up the cup and it's getting pretty dark there, I'm just going to move over. That way I don't have to re-wet it every once in a while, quite as often as I would have otherwise. There we go. Your goal here is consistency. A consistent grind is much better than an inconsistent fine grind. I find that the edges that come off of ceramic like this tend to be comparable to about a 700 to 800 grit stone. Although that might just be because it cuts very slowly and it gives you a good chance to be consistent. Then again, I might be horribly biased about how quickly things cut because I'm used to a carbide block, and other than that, I tend to use diamond. Stroke progression. Okay, so another very key item in how you get an even edge on here is building up just enough so that there's a burr on one side. Let's get a little more moisture on there. And you'll know that there's a burr if you take a fingernail and I'll use it with my thumb, and when you pass it across, it catches a little bit, or you can feel for it. It should bite differently on one side compared to the other. Or you can do it the lazy way and just count strokes. When I'm doing the rough grind on something like a knife in this condition, I will tend to do 15 strokes on one side. I'm not going to do all 15 strokes, but I count it 1, 2, 3, 4, and then flip over and do 15 on this side. And just alternate that way until you start to home in on where you want. When the glinting goes away, not like this, although I think the camera's at a slightly different angle from me. Yeah, right there. There's still a bit of glint there, so we're not done. Although I have been doing this a while, I cut out quite a bit of footage there. There we are. I'll do 15 and 15 for a long time until we get really close, and then I'll do 5 and 5, and then I'll do that about 3 times, and then 3 and 3, and then 2 and 2, and then 1 and 1, and then at the very end it will be just the 1/2, and just the 1/2, and just the 1/2, and just the 1/2. In sets of 3, once you get to the point where you're doing 5 and 5, then it'll be 5 and 5, 5 and 5, 5 and 5. So a set of 3 there, and then a set of 3 at 3, then a set of 3 at 2, then a set of 3 at 1, or if you're feeling antsy, you can skip to the 1, but I like counting in the prime numbers like that. Anyway, at the 1/2 and 1/2 stage, at the very end of the 1/2 and 1/2 stage, you should be using no pressure whatsoever, just a feather's touch. And if you do it that way, and you are using just the feather's touch, and it's not pressing hard whatsoever, you should not need honing. If you don't know what honing is, we're going to set this aside. Honing is what this is for. Now, this is getting its own video, and I'm going to go ahead and say that you can hone just as easily and just as well using proper technique with a butter knife or with the back of any straight piece of metal as you can with one of these. This has some advantages, but not a whole heck of a lot. Now, to link it one more time, I'm also going to be doing one on the Speedy Sharp, a carbide block. If you enjoyed this video, give me a like to raise my ranking in search results, give me a subscribe to see future videos. You can also visit my shop to get quick release paracord items like that, or like that. I also do custom wraps on things. Isn't that just gorgeous? This is actually 6 feet of paracord on a very small package, and if you undo the knot there and free open the loops and just pull, all of that will come out immediately. I quite enjoy quick release paracord items. Anyway, sharing this video around will hopefully get me more viewers, which would be very helpful to me as well, as another thing that you can do. Alright, all links will be in the description, and I look forward to reading whatever comments get left, if any.